We're going to get started, but in the interest of time, and we haven't gotten to this yet, but I know you guys are going to like to be able to share this idea. Now, my writing is not real cool. I did not spend a lot of time trying, but you can see it's better than my first attempt. But this is like a scratch-off ticket, and it's a mystery motivator, and you can make your own. And they used to have these really cool markers that you could write on, and then when you colored it in, it was clear so the kids couldn't tell which letter had the surprise in it. Well, they stopped making those markers. So I have been so excited because Pinterest, which is my new addiction, if you have not been on Pinterest yet, it's interest with a P in front of it. It is a bulletin board for adults, and what you do is you type in anything you're looking for. So I type in education, and all these really cool teaching ideas come up. I type in behavior, and pretty much really cool behavior intervention ideas come up. There's a few not so great ones that pop up too. But you also can look up decorating and shoes and jewelry and all that kind of stuff too. So you can spend thousands of hours on it.
But you have to be invited to?
You don't have to. Sign up using Facebook, if you have a Facebook account, and they automatically put you in. You don't have to wait for an invitation. You've been good in waiting for an invitation. Anyway, Pinterest. You go to Pinterest.com. They don't sell anything, but it's Pinterest.com. Like interest with a P in front of it, P-I-N. And I already have like 1,800 pins. That's how exciting it is. It is so cool. You build bulletin boards. So I have a bulletin board that says classroom ideas. And you just pull, if you like something, you just click pin it, and it will go to your bulletin board. And then that way you can go back, and all the cool ideas that you've thought of over the years are there. People have posted it on there, and it is everybody's new addiction. And I think it's better than Angry Birds and stuff like that. Anyway, on Pinterest, they told how to make your own scratch-off tickets. So I made these. I'm going to pass them around, and you guys feel free to scratch off, take out a coin, and you can have the coin back. You don't have to keep it with this. But anyway, you can scratch off part of it. You take 2 parts metallic paint, like little boys use to paint those model cars, and 1 part Dawn dishwashing liquid or any kind of dishwashing liquid. Mix it together. So 2/3 paint, 1/3 Dawn or any kind of dishwashing detergent. Mix it together and then paint over it, and then it scratches off. And I think you should laminate it, because then you can use it year after year after year. Cool? And kids, so what you could do is, this could be a classroom motivation tool. So you could tell all the kids, if we are really quiet today, if everybody remembers to raise their hand and wait to be called on, I'll choose one person to go up and scratch a letter off. Now what I did on these, I put a prize behind every single letter. And they were all things that as a teacher I was willing to give away. So I know not everybody don't scratch a whole letter off, but you can kind of see. Now I know that kids will try to peek and see what it is. So I wrote mine with the same color ink as the scratch stuff. So I wrote with a silver pen, because I know how kids are. They'll walk up and just kind of touch it and, oh, I don't like that prize. Let me, I can't bend up. Wait a minute, maybe I can. I don't want to disconnect the pack that's in there. So I'll pass this one around on this side, and this one around on this side. Laminate it first, and then you'll be able to use it year after year after year, and you can write neater than me. Don't get the silver stuff in your food if you've still got food on your table. Anyway, I wanted to have time for that to go all the way around for people to see. I've got some more examples of stuff I found on Pinterest later if we have time. Back to this young man, Oughter Be Good, that they had the 5 steps for how to get yourself kicked out of school. So what we did with this particular child, I'm now working with somebody in that state that I was in, and they're the ones that sent me the BIP, and so, but I already knew how it was going to come. So pre-teaching skill deficits, token economy, leadership opportunities in the classroom, and that's public relations, letting a child have a leadership role in the classroom. And I don't know if you guys remember last year me talking about the 4 Ps for raising self-esteem. I've been doing a lot of research on self-esteem with kids, and I've got data out the kazoo on my website for how we haven't had a single child that if you put the 4 Ps in place, the child's behavior has not decreased and their grades have gone up. We've seen both sides of the pyramid change, and then all the non-medicated interventions for ADHD. For the replacement behavior, we had the secret signals, and the secret signal for this child, he was being disruptive because he didn't know the answer to everything the teacher was asking. And so we worked out a secret signal. If you know the answer, look the teacher in the eye. If you don't know the answer, look down at your desk, and she'll know not to call on you. And that's face-saving for the kid, because kids don't want to be called on if they don't know the answer. And when you have a kid with low self-esteem, you need to work out those kind of issues with them. And it didn't take me long to figure out that this kid had low self-esteem, because I asked the teacher, here's how this is my litmus test. How many of you have a kid that if somebody gives them a compliment, they immediately act up? That's a kid with low self-esteem, because in their head, they are not the most wonderful kid in the whole wide world, and you just said something good about them, and that doesn't match how they feel about themselves on the inside. So they must act up to prove to you that they are what they think they are, which is the troublemaker in the class or the disruptor in the class. And then we taught him to blurt out into his hand the bubble and hold the answer in his hand until the teacher called on him. And if he was looking at her, then she knew, and we had him actually hold a bubble in his hand, and she knew that meant he had an answer to give, and then she'd call on him. So we gave him tons of positive reinforcement for appropriate behavior. He earned breaks, acknowledgement of signals. So if he, she never called on him if he was looking down. So that's acknowledgement of signals. Monitoring him for ADHD stressors and frequent booster shots. Here's some other little things that I didn't get to with ADHD that I think are really nice, quiet stims for kids. A pool noodle. They're, those big pool noodles, you can get them for $1. For little kids, you can cut that pool noodle into fourths, put it on the floor, and kids can take off their shoes and roll it with their feet, and that's very relaxing and calming. If you're worried that the child will trip over it, which I was, because I thought, it'll be down there, they'll stand up, they'll trip over it, what you do is take a bungee, the physical therapy banding, run it through the middle of it, which takes some stuffing to get it down through there, but you stuff it down through there and then tie it to the 2 chair legs, not to the child, but to the 2 chair legs. And then it's between their feet down there, and they can just roll their feet on it, and it gives them something that they can move their feet on, and as long as it's not making that noise. As speaking of chairs, what I do is I used to buy physical therapy banding and tie it between the 2 front chair legs on all the kids' desks, and then the kids could bounce their foot. Much like a lot of you are doing, you've got your legs crossed and your foot's going like this. What you're doing is helping organize your thoughts by providing that input through that movement that you're doing, and we have to encourage kids to do that. And what I found out worked just as well and was absolutely free is pantyhose. Now, I know that grosses people out when I say that, but I ask parents to send in used pantyhose. It doesn't even have to be new pantyhose, and all I say is please wash it, please cut off the panty part, please cut off the foot part. All I want is the leg part. Don't send me the whole pantyhose. And so tying that on there, well, my kids got so creative, they were getting their parents to buy the fishnets and all that kind of stuff, but what it does is it doesn't matter what it is, it's stretchy, and the kids can put their foot on it. Some kids will put their foot behind it and push against it, and kids figure out what they need to do and they start to do it without even thinking. So even the little kids will have that on their chair, and they'll overstim on it a little bit at first, but it doesn't take long for them to get used to that. For a quiet hand fiddle for those kids with ADHD that need to have their hands into everything, I found this at Mardell's, which has locker supplies for teenagers, which I had no idea. You can buy chandeliers and wallpaper and shag carpet to decorate your locker if you are a middle school or high school student. Well, one of these rugs costs $7, and you can cut it up into 21 nice size squares so that all the kids have a nice quiet fiddle, and they can just keep it in their desk, and it's rubber on the back and loopy on the other side, kind of chenille. And the kids are really liking it, and the nice thing about it is if a kid throws it and it hits somebody, it won't hurt. So it's a nice quiet fiddle, causes no pain if it hits you upside the head. And then this is a bath mat from Bed Bath & Beyond. It feels like, it looks like grass. And it's a nice fiddle, and that can be cut up into 28 pieces. And I apologize, but my suitcase weighed over 50 pounds, so my husband had to take 2 things, and he took that and that. And I had a pool noodle, and I said, if I can't have that and that, take the pool noodle too. So I got my suitcase to 50 pounds. So I apologize, I was going to pass it around for you. But I have the bath mat, and it's $7.97, so that's pretty cheap for a nice quiet fiddle. So we're going to look at one more BIP, and then you get to talk about a kid that you would like to write a BIP for and have time to do that. This was a young lady, Taylor Be Good, and you guys, I'm not making this up. This really came in. It was sent to me, and somebody said, does this BIP look okay to you? She had traumatic brain injury, and I know this isn't a deaf student or a hard of hearing student, but you have kids who have lots of different reasons for having behaviors. So these are the 3 behaviors they wanted to target. Fails to make decisions or come to a conclusion regarding choices. Folks, that would be a difficulty with traumatic brain injury. Becomes physically aggressive with teachers. Could be part of her traumatic brain injury. Does not demonstrate ability to control temper. Could be part of her TBI. Here's what they wrote. The student will make positive decisions without causing harm to herself or others. How's she going to do it? The student will control anger to the extent of not requiring to be physically restrained. Why is that everybody's favorite thing? The student will demonstrate appropriate behavior when angry or upset. So they don't even tell how she's going to get there. The replacement behavior, the teacher or para will help the child to follow directions without causing harm to others. How are they going to do it? You know, and that's what I wrote back to them. I said, you don't tell how, you don't tell what you're going to put in place. Everybody could interpret that totally differently. They will show child how to express feelings verbally rather than physically. How? What if this is a kid that isn't verbal? The teacher para will remind the student of coping skills and use a voice that is controlled and quiet. The student will be reminded to refrain from arguing. The interventions, they will reinforce the student for making positive choices. Teacher will speak with child to explain what she has done wrong, allow her to go to lunch early. One thing, if you look, she's a junior in high school, and they're talking like she's 3. The teacher para will remind the child of coping skills, provide quiet place, remove from situation, deliver direction, I'm sorry I'm going so fast, in a supportive manner, and intervene early. The teacher para will provide positive feedback. Anyway, you can see positive consequence, praise, classroom privileges, free time, note home, that's it. Same thing, all the same. And then negative consequences, remove from situation, call home, loss of free time, parents should not reward negative behavior. If somebody writes that on a behavior intervention plan, what are the parents going to do? Put up a brick wall like, you think I'm rewarding this? You know, so it was just all around. It was actually the parent that sent me this BIP and said, is this a good BIP? This is what they want me to sign. So I contacted the school and I said, you know, I'd like to help you out. And I gave them some ideas. This was their 2nd attempt. So you can see they got a little bit more, but it still wasn't all that great. So they added some things like a visual schedule and choices and choosing between 2 equal choices. And then, yeah, and you guys have this on page, I'm sorry, 20, and then 21. Oh, I didn't give you their second attempt. I'm sorry. I thought I did. Yoga breathing, PowerPoint relationship narratives, which are much like the visual, the video self-modeling, but a PowerPoint of appropriate behavior. 60 beats per minute music, which wouldn't help a student who was hard of hearing or deaf, but we do know that heart rates go up when kids have aggressive behaviors, and that was one of the things I had shared with them. We did some research on kids who had aggressive behaviors, and what we found was their heart rate shoot up to 147 beats per minute prior to the aggressive act. That was on average, and these were kids who, all ages who were displaying aggressive behaviors. We found out their heart rates went up that far and that high, 45 to 90 seconds prior to the aggressive act. So we have time to intervene. So we know some things that set kids off. One of the things that sets kids off that's in every school, or at least most of the schools in America, are fluorescent lights. And we know that the flickering of fluorescent lights, the kids see that. It bothers them. And there's a company called Huelight, HUELIGHT.net, that makes covers that go over the fluorescent lights that filters out that flickering. And what we're doing is at the alternative school that I work at, we've started slowly replacing. We take baseline data, and then the only intervention is changing those light covers. And what we're seeing is decreases in aggressive acts. I'm even telling teachers, when kids transition back from a high energy time, like PE, anytime they've been out in the hallway and come back in, kill the lights, have the lights off, and use a 60-watt bulb lamp on your desk. And just that alone has decreased a lot of the aggressiveness and a lot of the disruptions as the kids come in. So there's lots of little things like environmental changes that you can make that can slow down kids' heart rates. Just teaching them that breathing, taking deep breaths and stuff like that. When Taylor uses her words, instead of action, she'll earn a 15-minute break. She'll earn tokens for calming herself down in the area specified, and those tokens can be cashed in for 5 extra minutes of a break. So they got a little bit more. I did help them tweak it a little bit more because I wanted a few more things. So I'm not going to have you do Taylor because she's different. I want you to do one of your kids, but I want to show you a couple of things before we go on. I thought this was a really cute idea. A lot of teachers have something like this, and what this is a little flip book. One says, I'm working fine, I need help and I can't keep working, I need help but I can keep working. And what you do is every kid has one of these, so you get somebody to make them for you. And when the kids are doing independent seat work, much like this young lady was, when she gets stuck, she's figured out a quick way to get everybody's attention on her. So you teach this to all the kids. So if you're stuck, you flip it to red. If you can't go on, you can't do anything until I come to you. If you can keep working until I get there, you just have a question, flip it to yellow. And if you're working fine, flip it to green. And so it's really nice. It could be taped down to the top of their desk so they aren't falling down all the time. And the kids could just flip the pages to what they need. Now, what I used to do as a classroom teacher, because I didn't know to do this, I had their name tags Velcroed on the top of their desk. And when they needed help, I had an extra piece of Velcro on the front of their desk. And I always had the kids sitting in a U, because that way everybody's in the front row. So I'm in the middle and there's a U, so I can see the front of everybody's desk. If they needed help, they took their name tag off and just stuck it over the top to the top of their desk here. I heard the Velcro, so I knew to look and see who it was. The rest of the kids paid very little attention to it at all. Then I knew when I went to go help them, I just moved the name tag back up to the desk. And that was just the way I did it. But you probably have some really great ideas like that. Anybody want to share what you've seen? Any cool ideas like that?
I'm smiling because it sounds like that restaurant where Run Forest Run, where they have the ping pong channel. The one I maybe figured. Yeah, Bubba Gump.
Oh, Bubba Gump. Yeah, yeah. I need something right away. I've been there. I know what you're talking about. They've got you can ring a buzzer, and it has a different signal for you. You flip your sign, to if you need something right away to the waiter or waitress. Yeah, so it's the same sort of thing. Any other ideas that you guys have shared or have seen used so that kids can signal they need help without blurting out in the classroom?
A similar system to that, on a one-page, a little sheet that can be attached to their homework. So if they had a lot of trouble getting it done, they can check off one of the 3 boxes that are color-coded that way.
Okay, and then do they hand it to the teacher?
It's put down to their homework.
Oh, okay, when they bring it back? Oh, okay, so when they bring it back, their homework back, so then do they get a second chance to do their homework if they're...
With somebody to help them.
Okay, because that would really help kids, because I think a lot of kids don't do homework because they couldn't figure it out, and they just figure, you know, I can't do it, so I'll just act like I didn't do it, and then nobody would know, and then they just get further and further behind. So that would be a really cool way to save face, because nobody knows. It's just clipped on there. I like that. Okay, this is what I actually used with the little girl, very much like this one. She had Prader-Willi syndrome, and she had meltdowns like you wouldn't believe. And what I wanted to do was teach her, this isn't her thing, I didn't have a picture of hers on this computer, but what you do, she used to have meltdowns, like she ripped the doors off of the refrigerator. Prader-Willi, all they can think about is food. And when they can't have food, they get very upset and tear things up. And she literally ripped the doors off of the refrigerator. Her mom had them padlocked shut because she would eat everything in the refrigerator. And she just ripped them right off the whole icebox. So what I did with her is I took this Palm Pilot, which I got from AbleLink Technologies. If you want to look at it, you can actually buy a used Palm Pilot for less than $20 on eBay. So it's something you could share with parents. And you can videotape yourself signing and put it into this. DataViz is a free program that will let you transfer video and PowerPoints and documents and Excel spreadsheets. It lets you transfer anything that you can do on the computer onto the Palm Pilot. And it doesn't have to be Palm brand Palm Pilot. DataViz works with everything, and it's a free download. But you can put this on, and you can have movies, you can sign. So this little girl, I had her find her favorite place, and so at home, it was in her bedroom looking at her porcelain dolls. At school, they had a room set up with a beanbag that was away from everybody, and it was the place she went to calm herself down. And she had a job working at the library, and at the library they had a place where she could go that had no food, that she could calm herself down. And so what hers had were the steps that she used to calm herself down. So this is more of a grown-up version, but walking around with a Palm Pilot looks very age-appropriate for the high school students. And that's what I was looking for her, was something that looked more grown-up than walking around with a little laminated, you know, neon green book like I sometimes see kids, you know, because that stands out. What I did for her, I bought a little purse, and I cut out a window on the front of the purse and sewed in some clear plastic, and then the Palm Pilot went in upside down, and she just wore a crossbody bag all the time, so she always had it with her, and when she was feeling like she was going to lose it, she would flip this up, press the button, and it would go through all the steps. And you know, it could be signed, and you can set it to run all by itself, repeat itself. I have her mom on video saying for the first time in her life she's been able to calm herself down, because you can't argue with a Palm Pilot. But if I tell her to go calm down, go do your yoga breathing, we're going to get in a coercive cycle and start arguing with each other. But if the Palm Pilot tells her to go to her best place to sit and calm herself down, she does it. And she was so proud of herself that she could do that. So there's lots of cool technology out there, and I just wanted to throw that out. Research says that watching 7 minutes of nature videos is very calming to kids. And so this is a 7-minute video of just nothing but nature pictures. And I have, for the kids who are hearing, I have 60 beats per minute music playing. You can download this for free off of behaviordoctor.org under Forms and Tools. It's called Calming Video. I have 2 of them so far. One is these pictures that you can see, and the second one are nature pictures that I took from Australia. I wrote to this photographer and asked him if I could use his pictures, if I could buy the rights to use his pictures, and when I told him what I was using it for, he gave them to me for free. The 60 beats per minute music, Gary Lamb, I wrote to him and asked if I could buy the rights to use his music, and he thought of a price I could pay. So I did buy the rights to 2 of his CDs. So I've got 7 minutes of 60 beat per minute music and 7 minutes of nature pictures. So for the hearing kids, there is the music playing. For the non-hearing kids or the kids who are hard of hearing, there's the nature pictures. And what research says is that this calms them down. I looked all this up last year when I was working on test-taking strategies and trying to find ways to calm kids down because kids were getting so anxious about the state testing and all that stuff that, that we had kids getting sick to their stomach. So I just looked up all kinds of ways to decrease that anxiety besides getting the teachers to stop telling them that if they didn't pass it, they weren't going to the next grade. So this is available to download. It takes a long time to download because it's so many pictures. I'm working on one with pictures from Iceland that I took, and I'll get it posted on there soon. So as the kids come in from this high energy area, so when they come in the morning, you can have this playing on the whiteboard in the room. When they come back from PE, have this playing, with the lights out or dimmed at least, with the 60-watt bulb lamp on instead of the fluorescent lights. I was sharing this up here in Chicago at a different training near here, and I trained secondary teachers the first day and elementary teachers the second day. And one of the secondary teachers came running in. We were meeting at the high school. She came running in during the elementary day, and she said, "You guys, later on today she's going to tell you about this video, and I just want you to know, everybody know Johnny? This worked with Johnny. He came in and actually sat down and got himself together and calmed down." So besides the fact that there's research on this that says it works, I've got anecdotal notes from a real classroom saying that it works. So you can make your own as well. It's on my website under Forms and Tools. So Behavior Doctor, and it's called Calming Video. So there's 2 of them on there right now. So that's something that you could use. I'm going to skip Corey. Thank you for skipping Corey. All right. You want to do a functional behavior assessment. There's where I had the Maddie Jones, the old version that I showed you earlier. So I want you to go back to pages 12 to 15. There are blank competing pathway charts here. And I want you, thinking of all the things that we've kind of talked about already today, think of one of your children that you'd like to write a BIP for, or one that you'd like to rewrite a BIP for. And using some of the ideas that we've shared today, work on a new behavior intervention plan using the competing pathway forms on pages 12 through 15. I just gave you a bunch of them so that you could use them. But to make sure that you cover everything, the antecedent modifications, the replacement behavior, and the consequence modifications, and just holler if you have any questions. And you can sit with people that you work with and work together on one student that you might like to really change the behavior. Oh, open that up and pass them down for everybody. There's pencils at the end of every row so that everybody can have a pencil. No, you haven't had enough time to write a whole behavior intervention plan, but I've gotten some really, really good questions, and I want to make sure I address all the questions that I've had. We had a question right here, and I don't see your name tag. Damien, thank you. I just wanted you to say your name. Damien asked, is there a rule of thumb for how much data you need to collect? And that is a really good question. And here's what the research says. The research says you need 10 incidents in order to determine the function of a child's behavior, at least 10 incidents. Now, some kids are so wonderfully compliant that they provide those 10 incidents in 3 or 5 minutes. I always say I do not want to base a functional behavior assessment and a behavior intervention plan off 1 day of data. Because it could have been a good day, it could have been a bad day, I could have been having a bad day, something else could have been going on. So the bare minimum, I say, is 3 days of data. So I teach a 6-month class where I teach people how to build behavior teams inside your school, and they come back for 6 months. I make them collect at least 3 days of data before they can make any analysis of it. Now, I have done a functional behavior assessment in a 1-hour observation, but I had to make a decision quickly in this case because I didn't have time to collect data because it was May, and the teacher was about ready to quit. But I paired that up with anecdotal notes and interviews of all the other teachers that were working with this child. He was blurting out and getting attention from peers, and I was quickly able to figure out that what that kid really wanted was to be able to teach math, because he didn't blurt out in any class but math, and that was by me going around and talking to everybody. I had 3 weeks to come up with an intervention plan, or this teacher was going to turn in her resignation and go be the greeter at Walmart. And so I wanted to come up with a plan, and this kid was driving her crazy. But I've had other data things that took me a year worth of data. And that comes to your question, which was, what about these kids that we don't know what the antecedent or setting event is? It's some slow trigger that started before school, and you don't know. Did they say F you, you F and B because somebody called them dodo head on the bus that morning? Or did they say it because they didn't want to do the math you just assigned to them? So, and you don't necessarily know that. Do you have a question? Because I can tell you're dying to.
No, to add what you're saying to you, because you do end up finding out there's so much more you can learn from at home.
Yeah.
My question is, do you then, like sometimes I find it difficult to get the teachers, because I'm a social worker, to get teachers to, or realistically, can they do every period of the day? And I'm wondering what your experience has been, because sometimes I'll try to pick 3 periods a day for the week or so. Or, like, because I want to get realistic.
I know. And one teacher.
Back to the days of the week, when I've gotten good data, it's really showing me that, hey, Mondays, he's bad.
Yeah.
First, because at home the structure's not there, but also I've learned in the past by getting the data that, like, oh, he goes, the parents are, on Wednesdays he goes to the dance, like nobody knows. And why he comes in Thursday with a little bit less something, you never know what's going on, or you find out.
Yeah, and that's the point. You take those 3 days of data. If it looks undifferentiated and you cannot figure out what it is, then take some more data, do some interviews. There's all kinds of free interviews that you can download. Finding out from the parents that on Wednesday night they go to Boy Scouts and they don't get to bed until an hour later than they normally go to bed, and that's why Thursday is the day that pops up as the day that's the most difficult. My husband and I know I shared this last time, my husband and I chose to live with an adult who had autism, bipolar condition, obsessive-compulsive disorder, intellectual disabilities, and mild cerebral palsy. And his name was Jay, and Jay lived with our family for 10 years. And before Jay came to live with us, he would miss 3 or 4 days every 5 to 6 weeks. And I decided, not on my watch, I'm going to figure out why this guy locks down and refuses to get up in the morning. He refused to get up in the morning. He refused to eat. He refused to drink. He refused to take his medication. And nothing came into his body and nothing came out of his body. He had that much control. After 24 hours, he would have to be hospitalized. And so I pulled 1 year's worth of data. Now, I just happen to have every year's worth of data because his parents are special ed professors, and they've been taking data since he was born. So I pulled the previous year's data and laid it out in a room with long tables like this. And I first went over to the weather department, and I asked them to run me the moon cycle. Because what do we always say? It's a full moon, but nobody's ever really proved that. So I thought, I'm going to prove it, and everybody's going to be in love with me because I'm going to prove it's the moon. So the weather department was really excited, one, that somebody showed up and wanted something from them. And they ran off a graph with the moon, and I laid it out with this year's worth of data. And I had anecdotal notes and antecedent behavior consequence data. I laid it out, and I was so excited. And guess what? It had absolutely nothing to do with it. So then I went back and I looked at calendars, mom and dad's calendar. Was dad out of town? Was mom out of town? You know, was a housemate sick? Or, you know, and I just looked at all these different things and I could not find any kind of correlation between what was going on in his life until after. It took me 3 months. I'm just going to be honest, this was not a quick fix, but it took 3 months, and at the end of 3 months, somebody said something about the barometric pressure is flipping all over the place today, and I went, oh, barometric pressure. So I went back over to the weather department, and they were thrilled again. And I said, all right, here's the deal. I said, I'm not sure how this is going to work, but can you look at what the barometric pressure was on this day? And they said yes. And I said, can you run a formula that will tell me what percentage barometric pressure changed in inches from day 1 to day 2, and then day 2 to day 3, day 3 to day 4? They said, give us a week to think about how to do this, and we'll get back with you. They did it. They brought it over. They wanted to see my data. We laid it out, and lo and behold, what we found with Jay was if there was a certain inch change in the barometric pressure in a 24-hour period, Jay was going to start a downward spiral. I now know when this behavior is going to show up, I can put a behavior intervention plan in place. Although that wasn't nearly as easy as I thought it was going to be, because I thought, okay, what do I know? I know he's going to lock down. I can't change the barometric pressure. There is not a control on your house that makes the air, you know, the same everywhere, every day. So what do I do about it? So I started researching bipolar and barometric pressure, and of course there wasn't at that time anything about that. And then throw in autism and obsessive compulsive disorder and intellectual disabilities, you know. I had to guess, but here's what I guessed. And a lot of times that's all we do, we guess. We come up with a hypothesis, we throw out our hypothesis, we write a plan, and here's what I decided. I said, here's the deal. Jay, as an adult with autism, is very compliant. I say, Jay, it's time to eat dinner. He shows up at the dining room table. He complies with what I ask. I say, Jay, it's time to go to bed. He goes down the hallway and starts putting on his pajamas. I say, Jay, it's time to set the table. He comes in. He's just a very compliant guy. So his body says, Jay, be sad. So he's sad because his body told him, you're sad. He's reacting, which means he's in brainstem. He's just doing what his body is telling him to do. So then I thought about all my research on kids with oppositional defiant disorder, and what they say is kids with oppositional defiant disorder go straight to brainstem if somebody does something to make them feel like they're in fighting words, you know, like, you know how some kids you can give them the hairy eyeball and they're fine and they straighten up, but a kid with oppositional defiant disorder, you give them the hairy eyeball and those are fighting words and we are going to the mat. So they're in brainstem, and what I know from my research is that when you have a kid with oppositional defiant disorder, what you want to do is walk past them, smile at them as you go by. I'm sorry, you're playing the oppositional defiant disorder child. You smile at them as you go by, you walk past them, you come in from behind them, not as a surprise attack, but gently talk into their right ear, because the right ear is connected to the side of the brain that's more conducive to compliance. So that if this is a hearing child, you want to talk into their right ear. If this is a child that you're signing to, you want to sign from their right side, because they're going to be thinking over here as they receive that language, the language processing side. You want to get it to go that way. And you say something that's an equal choice. Which would be better for you, sitting in the red chair or the blue chair? Can't wait to see what you decide. Use expected compliance and go on. And we know that from working with oppositional defiant disorder kids that equal choices, they're more likely to comply than if you say you do that or you go to the office, or you do that or you lose your recess. If we draw a line in the sand, they're going to jump all over the line in the sand and make you cross it. So I thought, okay, so Jay is functioning in brainstem. I wonder if choices would work for him. And so what my husband and I, when we all moved in together, what we started doing is we would watch the barometric pressure. We had it posted right in our kitchen so we could look at it, and we knew what it was the day before, and we would look at it, and if this was a day that it looked like the barometric pressure, and you know in Kansas and Illinois too, the barometric pressure changes a lot from one day to the next sometimes. And if the barometric pressure was changing, we turned everything in our house into a choice. Now, I didn't rapid fire them at him, but I would say things like, Jay, do you want to set the table with the purple dishes or the green dishes? Do you want to put the forks on the left or the right? So instead of saying set the table, I would give him all these choices. do you want to use the tall, skinny glasses tonight or the short, fat glasses? Do you want to put a straw in it or no straw in it? You know, and I just kept him going using choices. Do you want Tom to drive you to work or Laura to drive you to work? You know, just little, everything was a choice. Jay went 9.5 years without missing a single day of work, other than for being sick. But he never, now I'm not saying I cured bipolar, so don't leave here saying, here's the cure for bipolar. He still got sad, but he never got so sad that he locked down and refused to do anything. Now, every once in a while he'd miss work because he had a cold or something like that. Jay would still not be missing work, except that Jay passed away in January of, I know, it was the saddest. There's not a day that goes by that my husband and I do not make some reference about Jay, because he was that wonderful and impacted our life that much. But this kind of answers your question that sometimes I can't see the barometric pressure, and it took, I don't know, somebody just said the right word at the right time to give me that thought to go over there and think of that. Since then, I've been asking parents to keep track of their children with bipolar, ranking them. 3 is a Tigger day, 1 is a Eeyore day, and 2 is a Pooh day. You know, Winnie the Pooh, nice and even keel. And I've just said, you know, as simply as that. Now, the kids who rapid cycle during the day and go up and down all day long, parents have a little more trouble with that. But the kids who tend to be whatever they are in the morning, and they're that all day, so if they wake up in the morning and they're Eeyore all day. If they wake up in the morning and they're Tigger all day. And I know I'd probably get sued by Disney if they knew I was comparing Disney characters to. But it is a good explanation for parents. Then I take that information and I match it up with the barometric pressure for where they live. And what I found is a lot of kids, if the barometric pressure's up, they're up. If the barometric pressure's down, they're down. And I know as a behavior therapist who had a company in Georgia that served all the kids in Georgia, when Hurricane Charlie and Katrina and all of them went through Florida and southern Georgia, you know where all my referrals came from? I mean, I was getting like 25 referrals a week from southern Georgia because the barometric pressure was flipping all over the place down there. So sometimes it's something so tiny, and it just takes that coming up with a hypothesis, talking to that whole team. You may go into a behavior support team with all your data, and your data is undifferentiated. You can't quite figure out what it is. So as a team, you come up with your best guess, your best hypothesis, and based on that best hypothesis, and that means interviewing the bus driver, that means interviewing the parents. You know, I mean, maybe the bus driver knows this kid's getting bullied at the bus stop, and that's why behavior is first thing in the morning so wild and wacky. But you'll have that data to look at to come up with those hypotheses.
I actually had a Riffle say that. She was saying barometric pressure.
Yeah. Well, there are now research articles.
This was about 20 years ago.
Yeah, I just read a research article, sorry, in a psychiatric ward. They could tell when the barometric pressure, and then it's a whole research article about, you know, people losing it when the barometric pressure is flipping all over the place. Pretty interesting articles. There's a lot of things that aren't going to show up in the data, but if you've got the data, once that data's there, you can make all these great hypotheses, because you can see things like Mondays are difficult, or, gosh, let's think back. What was the weather like on Monday? It was rainy. I wonder if rain you know, has something to do with it, or Dad went out of town, and getting everybody in. That's why that behavior support team that I showed you from Cronin Horner is so important, thinking about everybody who might know something about the child. And it's amazing, and I know I keep mentioning them, but it's amazing what bus drivers know. They know how that kid came out the door in the morning, you know, with one shoe on and one shoe in their hand. They know if the kid was hiding until the bus got up there and ran up to the bus after. So you don't even have to invite them to the meeting. Just make a trip out to the bus when the kid's getting on or off in the morning and say, hey, anything you could tell me about Johnny here, anything that you think might be pertinent. They really do have a wealth of information, and they don't even realize it. You know, when I do PBIS training, I always have transportation departments send a couple of people, because they don't even realize how much they impact a kid's day until they come and sit in that meeting and learn how they can play a huge role in PBIS. So they are one of those people. I think I've answered all the questions that came up when I was walking around. Anything else anybody want to add? In the back of the book that you have, there are all kinds of interventions for academics, for ADHD, because I know that there's lots of different things that kids are doing. Last year I introduced you to the 4 P's for raising self-esteem. Did anybody try it? I just want you to see. The 4 P's for raising self-esteem are public relations, proficiency, power, and philanthropy. And I'm not going to have time to go into all of it, but what we found, I have 120 schools that I work with, and I made each school that I work with choose one student in each classroom that they thought